In this video, I want to talk about clerical attire. Why is it that priests dress the way they do? Before I get into that, please like and subscribe. Okay, so this is a question that a lot of people have. Why do priests all wear black? Why do they wear the Roman collar? Or do priests always have to wear that, or do they have other clothes? All good and valid questions. So in this video, I want to talk about the rule itself, the history of the Roman cassock, and the various forms of clerical attire. So first of all, the rule itself. It's very simple. It's found in the Code of Canon Law, and it says that priests are to wear ecclesiastical garb. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, that takes a few different forms. The most basic form is the Roman cassock, which is what I am wearing right here in this video. And the history of the Roman cassock, it's one of those things where it's really hard to exactly pinpoint its full history and where it came from because it gradually developed over time. It seems to have developed on the one hand from typical Roman attire in the Roman Empire. And in the early church, it appears that priests and lay people did not dress differently, but over time they began to diverge. So priests were dressing in a way different from the laity, in a way to distinguish them from the laity. Now, the Roman cassock seems to have developed first in France and was something kind of like this, but this developed over time. And eventually the church started to decree certain things about clerical attire. And basically, priests were not to be elaborate and extravagant because, well, the church didn't want us to appear to be rich. Now, by the Middle Ages is when we start to see the Roman cassock really become the norm. Now, one interesting thing about the cassock is that if all Catholic clergy are wearing their cassock, you can actually determine their rank. So if you look at me, you can see how everything in my cassock is black. So you would know that I am just a priest. Now, for example, let's say if the fascia here, that's this belt that I'm wearing, is more of kind of a magenta or a fuchsia color, and that he has, red buttons on his cassock, well, you would know that that guy is a Monsignor. Now let's say that to that he adds a shoulder cape, a cross around his neck, hanging in front of his chest called a pectoral cross, and has a magenta skull cap on, or a zucchetto is what it's called. Well, you would know that that guy is a bishop. Okay, now take everything that is fuchsia on a bishop's garb and turn it red. Well, you know that that guy is a cardinal. And now if he's in all white, well, that guy is the Pope. So what is the purpose behind all of this? Well, on the one hand, it is to distinguish the clergy from everybody else so that you immediately know that, okay, this guy over here is a priest. I mean, imagine for a second if you had a priest come in and visit your loved one in the hospital and he shows up in blue jeans and a Batman t-shirt. You would really question, is this guy really a priest? But when I show up in this, okay, you know that that actually is a priest. Now, there is symbolism behind the different elements of the cassock. On the one hand, we do have the fascia here, the belt, which actually is a symbol of chastity. The black color symbolizes two things. On the one hand, it symbolizes poverty because black was the color that poor people wore. It also symbolizes death. We do live in a world that is gripped by death. And then the Roman color symbolizes obedience, and also the white symbolizes hope in the midst of death. So that is a basic explanation of the Roman cassock. And this is a valid option for any priest to wear any day of the week. But you may have noticed that most priests that you know dress in a different way. So let's talk about those here. But first, a change of clothing. Okay, so now you see here that I have what we might call the clerical suit. You can definitely see how it is very similar to the cassock. Very clearly, the cassock has been adjusted to fit the modern suit. Now, many priests find this to be A little more suitable to modern tastes, although the cassock is still perfectly acceptable, and many priests find that to be a little more traditional and so break for that option. But the United States, or the Church in the United States, has identified that the normative clothing for a priest in his day-to-day business is either the cassock or the clerical suit. So when we are carrying out official business, like, when we're getting ready for Mass or going to visit the sick or holding a meeting, generally speaking, this is how we are supposed to be dressed. And for certain daily activities, the suit coat can be removed. Now, you will notice that I have this kind of nice vest on here. Many priests do have this, although many don't. This is called a gilet. It's just a nice, very formal attire. And so many priests will be dressing like this on formal occasions as well. Now, in your day-to-day business, you might find a priest dressed in a slightly more casual style. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so what I'm wearing here is probably what most of you are familiar with. This is what most priests wear in their day-to-day business. This is what we call a tab collar or a tabby. That's because my collar here is literally this plastic tab that goes right into my shirt. Now, there is another option wherein a priest can have a shirt that has a collar that wraps all the way around his neck and clips into the shirt. I actually don't wear one of those. I don't have one. But if you want to see that one, actually check out Father Justin's videos, because that's what he usually wears. It does look a little bit more formal than the tab collar, so some priests opt for that. Now, the reason that most priests opt for the tab collar is quite simple. On the one hand, it's the easiest, and it's the most comfortable. And also, I won't have to consistently launder my gilet or my cassock. I can just wash these shirts as I need to, so this is what most priests will wear in their day-to-day. Now, there is another question that a lot of people do have about priests and their attire, namely, Father, do you always have to wear that? Now, the church's expectation is that, generally speaking, yes, that I really should be wearing my clerics, that's what we call them. We call them clerics, at pretty much all times. So when I'm going out in public, not just when I'm in my church, but even if I'm going out grocery shopping or what have you, this is how I am expected to dress. Now, no, I don't sleep in this, obviously. Or if I'm doing any other activities like fishing, or even if I'm back at home with my family, most priests will change into regular clothing. When we're in circumstances when we don't need to be immediately identified as a priest, then generally we'll put on regular clothing. But generally speaking, if we're out in public, for the most part, we should be in clerics. A very basic explanation of clerical attire and why the priests dress the way they do. This has been The Bulwark. Please like and subscribe.